All right, and welcome to my presentation on Clostridium tetani. The taxonomy of Clostridium tetani. This is going to be in the domain bacteria, phylum Firmicutes, class Clostridia. I'm not going to try to say the order in the family because I'm sure I'm going to butcher it, but the genus is Clostridium. So Clostridium tetani, this is a rod-shaped or bacillus, a bacteria. It's gram-positive, and it's up to 0.5 micrometers wide and 2.5 micrometers long. And it looks like a drumstick. You can kind of see that in this photo here to an extent. And the main thing about Clostridium tetani is it's the cause of the tetanus disease, and we'll cover that later on. C. tetani, its genome is linear, and there's 2,799,000 base pairs. In that, there's 2,368 open reading frames that are going to encode for something. There's also several plasmids, and plasmid 88 contains the genes for encoding the tetanus toxin, something that we're going to be talking about a little bit more. And so here's the plasmid 88. As far as the cell structure, I already said it's a bacillus or rod-shaped bacterium. It's not always in this form where you see the spore here, but whenever there's actual photos of it, it's in that form normally. It uses multiple rotary flagella to move, and I've read that it's somewhat sluggish movement for bacterium. And C. tetani can form spores, which this is what you can see here. It makes the drumstick shape. So those spores, those endospores, they're very resilient, just like any endospore. Boiling for 15 minutes will kill most of them, but not all. One sure way to kill them all is to autoclave them at 15 psi for 15 minutes. But they're highly resistant to heat, chemicals, desiccation, ultraviolet light, and in this case, or any other species in the Clostridium family, they're also going to be resistant to oxygen, actually. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. As far as the ecology, it lives in soil, dust, and in the intestinal tract of some animals. It can pretty much be found in any soil, anywhere. If not the bacillus itself, the endospore can be found anywhere, pretty much in any soil. Its optimal temperature for growth is about 37 degrees Celsius. Any higher than that, and the endospore will form, actually. This grows best in a neutral to alkaline pH. As far as the metabolism, Clostridium tetani is an obligate anaerobe. So it relies on fermentation to produce energy, and like I said, anaerobe. So it's actually a strict anaerobe. So oxygen is poisonous to it. It can only stand very small amounts of oxygen, and when it is in the presence of oxygen, like I said earlier, I think it will form its spores. Its energy carrier is NAD+. Its carbon source is from organic compounds, and its energy source is also from organic chemicals. As far as the clinical significance, it's estimated that about 400,000 cases of tetanus occur each year, according to the World Health Organization. There's 4 clinical types, and we'll cover those later. And there's also a myth about rusty objects. That tetanus is caused by wounds and rusty objects. That isn't really true. At least tetanus doesn't grow well around rust. It doesn't really require iron or anything. It's more just that there's wounds and there can be tetanus anywhere in the dirt. As far as the virulence factors, there's 2 known toxins produced by C. tetani. At least 2 main ones. I did find some research that showed evidence of some other virulence factors that we don't know a lot about. But the 2 main ones we know about are tetanolysin and tetanospasmin. And actually, we don't even know that much about tetanolysin, so we're not going to talk about that. But it is a known virulence factor for C. tetani. Tetanospasmin is the main causes the clinical symptoms of the tetanus disease, and we're going to talk about how it does that. And it's actually one of the most potent toxins known, just following botulin toxin. So it's the second most potent toxin known. And the botulin is actually botulinum. It's caused by Clostridium botulinum, which, as you can tell, is in the same genus as Clostridium tetani. So they're very closely related. So it's interesting that some of the most potent toxins are both from the same family. I guess it's not too surprising. The development of the tetanus disease. So, as I said earlier, in the presence of oxygen, Clostridium tetani will develop an endospore to survive. And when it's back in a very low oxygen environment again, it could be a wound. That's how the disease starts. It could just be placed in the dirt or in water or something. It will germinate into bacilli again. And once a bacillus cells lyse or break open, they're going to release the tetanus neurotoxin tetanospasmin. And that's going to be the toxin that causes the symptoms here. Tetanospasmin is going to prevent a presynaptic release of neurotransmitters that inhibit muscle contraction. So that's why when people have tetanus, there's normally muscle contraction, spasms. There can be lockjaw. Essentially, the muscles aren't, or the muscles are always contracting or having spasms because the neurotransmitter isn't being released that's going to relax those muscles. I said earlier there's 4 clinical types, and we're going to go through those quickly here. The first is neonatal tetanus. This occurs in infants born without protective passive immunity from their mothers. So their mother is not immune to tetanus. And this normally occurs through infection of the unhealed umbilical stump on the infant, especially when the stump is cut by an unsterile instrument. That's a commonly how it happens. Not very common in the U.S., but in other countries it can happen and does happen. World Health Organization estimates that 58,000 newborns died from neonatal tetanus in 2010. And then we have local tetanus. This is an uncommon form of the tetanus, and patients have contraction of muscles in the same anatomical area as the injury, but just that local area only, and contractions may last for weeks, but only 1% of them are fatal. And then we have cephalic tetanus. This is a rare form of the disease, and this only occurs when C. tetani has infected the flora of the middle ear, or from injuries to the head where tetany infects the head. And then there's generalized tetanus. This makes up about 80% of the reported tetanus. So it's the most common form, I would think. And the first sign is lockjaw, followed by stiffness of the neck, difficulty in swallowing, and rigidity of abdominal muscles. and there's some other symptoms in there as well. There's a test where doctors stick a spatula down someone's throat, and if the person tries to cough it back up, then that's good. That's considered normal. But oftentimes people with tetanus, that won't trigger any coughing at all. These spasms can occur for 3 to 4 weeks, and complete recovery can take months. So the bright side of this is that we do have a vaccine, and it works very well. The tetanus disease can be prevented through immunization with the tetanus toxoid-containing vaccines. And these work so well that I think in the United States, where pretty much almost everyone is vaccinated for tetanus, if not everyone, I'm not sure exactly how that works. But in the United States, I think there's about 10 to 15 cases a year, so it's almost non-existent here. According to the World Health Organization, about 34,000 newborns died from neonatal tetanus in 2015, and that's a 96% reduction since 1988. So that's a good trend there. In 2016, 86% of infants worldwide were vaccinated with 3 doses of the tetanus vaccine. And I know that you're supposed to get more than 1 dose normally over a time period, I think when you're a child. This may explain, well, yeah, this is something that actually I found out while researching this, an interesting tidbit of information. There's a theory that this might explain the lower mortality rate from SARS-CoV-2 among children. And I read part of the article. I didn't really fully understand it. And who knows how much legitimacy there is there. I mean, it's at this point, it's kind of just a thought. It was published in August. But there might be some evidence there that the tetanus vaccine and some other vaccines that you have as a child might actually lower mortality rates from SARS-CoV-2. And in 2002, there was some research done, and they found that non-pathogenic strains of C. tetani and also other Clostridium species can be used for drug delivery to cancerous tumors. And this is where spores are used to colonize the specific regions of hypoxia and can be genetically transformed to produce enzymes like cytosine deaminase and tumor necrosis factor alpha. That's a cool use that I don't know how much it's used or if it's used at all, but it's an interesting area of study. In summary, Clostridium tetani is a gram-positive pathogenic bacillus known for causing the tetanus disease. And it's an obligate anaerobe and relies on fermentation. Tetanospasmin is the primary virulence factor, and this prevents presynaptic release of neurotransmitters that inhibit muscle contraction. And this is also an extremely potent toxin. Tetanus is prevented by vaccine, and the best way to lower cases is through vaccination. So that's my presentation on Clostridium tetani. Here are the references for you, and thank you.